Welcome to the Unhurried Living Podcast. We're sharing leadership conversations to help you develop unhurried rhythms of rest and work. We're helping you overcome hurry and make time for what matters most. And now, enjoy today's episode. Hey friends, welcome to episode 247 of the podcast. My name's Alan, and I'm so glad you've joined me here. I'm hopeful that our time together will help you rediscover an unhurried way of life and leadership. Now, we're living at a time in which our capacity for attention may be our most valuable asset. And if that's true, then our great liability is distraction and all of the ways in which we are training ourselves in distraction. Paying attention to the purpose of our lives and to where God may be inviting us to give of our energy and of our time is a beautiful opportunity. The world around us is perfectly happy to provide us with a lot of attractive options for surrendering our attention to mostly meaningless amusements. But God's purpose for you is gentler and quieter and probably less flashy, but definitely more substantial. God's Spirit would love to train you how to pay attention to His presence in your every moment. My guest today, Paul Angone, has written a book to help us with all this, Listen to Your Day. In it, he wants to help us stop drifting, stop worrying, and stop living distracted. I'm really looking forward to sharing our recent conversation with you in a minute. Paul Angone is a trusted and sought-after voice to college students, young professionals, and those going through career change. He's the best-selling author of 101 Secrets for Your 20s, 100 Questions You Need to Ask in Your 20s, and 25 Lies 20-somethings Need to Stop Believing. Paul is a dynamic keynote speaker at universities, corporations, and churches nationwide. He's also the creator of allgrownup.com and the All Grown Up podcast. He lives just outside Denver, Colorado with his wife, Naomi, and their 4 children. Now, if you're a new listener, welcome to the podcast. If you find these episodes helpful, would you please follow, rate, and review? And be sure to share this podcast with your friends. Meanwhile, let's dive into my conversation with Paul Angone. On today's Unhurried Living podcast, I'm pleased to have Paul Angone, author of Listen to Your Day. Paul, thanks so much for taking time to have this conversation.
Thanks so much for having me, Alan.
It's great to be with you. And I wonder, whenever we talk about a book, I love starting by just asking, can you share some of the story of how this particular book came to be?
Sure. I think like any book I've written, it's usually comes from my own personal problems or something I'm really struggling with or wrestling or really realizing I'm failing at. And I think it was that stark realization for me. I don't know if you have that setting on your phone, which will tell you at the end of the week how much time you're spending on your phone.
Sure.
I think when I put that on and I realized how much time it was, 6 hours a day, 7, 5, I had a problem. And then also when I was sitting down to write or I was reading a book, I was finding myself struggling more and more with just my own attention span. I felt like I couldn't focus. I was constantly being drawn with checking my phone, checking whatever internet browser is up, and no real reason to why I'm checking any of it. I just felt compelled to do it. It was becoming a reflex.
Yeah.
So that's when I started realizing, man, this is a problem for myself. I think it's a problem for a lot of people. Let me start researching and writing about that. So it was really through my own struggles that I started really focusing on my lack of focus or ability to really pay attention to things that matter.
Yeah. And I think, as you say, not only is it your personal challenge, and sometimes I think some of the best books grow out of that dynamic, but I think it's a real problem in our cultural reality right now. Can you say a little bit more about the challenge we're facing in terms of our capacity or incapacity for attention?
Yeah, gosh. I define it as obsessive connection disorder.
Oh, yeah.
And not to make light of obsessive compulsive disorder, but obsessive connection disorder, it really speaks to what really is a certifiable addiction, I feel like, especially with our devices.
Yeah.
And I'll typically ask people, if I go to a speaking engagement, I'll ask people, who jumps on social media for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, you kind of lose track of time. And then you leave that experience and then you think to yourself, man, that was such a good use of my time. Like, I feel energized. I feel ready to tackle my problems. I feel good about myself and my self-worth. Like, I have enough stuff. Like, I feel great. I feel content. I don't think many of us leave that experience feeling that way.
No.
Which tells me that really this is the signs of a telltale addiction. It really is, I think, our 21st century cigarette, where whenever we feel awkward or whenever we feel anxious, it's becoming that reflex to go take a phone break, a cigarette break, and step out. But now we can do it on the couch with everybody around us or in the meeting. It's even more socially acceptable than even cigarettes were back in the 50s and 60s. So it really becomes that addiction that I think it feeds then and is rewiring really our brains to get that instant stimulus and that lack of attention and focus.
Yeah, that's so critical. I mean, so in a sense, I think one of the things I've said is I think our devices are training us in distraction. And there's a physical reality to that. You mentioned the whole dopamine dynamic. I think there's also a mental, cognitive sort of dynamic to that. So I'm just curious, maybe, especially as it relates to just the practicality of devices, are there some ways that you've found how to relate better to this smartphone that we all seem to have in our pockets?
Yeah, I think, and it's definitely a question we have to start asking. We have to start becoming intentional about how we are spending our attention.
Yeah.
And really our attention is money. It's currency. And that's the phrases we use, pay attention. We actually have those metaphors looped into the ways that we talk about attention. And really every app and social media company sees your attention the exact same way. And they are being very strategic with systems in place that are totally geared towards making everything as addictive as possible because they want your attention, the amount of time spent, to be astronomical, to show their stakeholders and their advertisers, more importantly, that you should spend their money there. So we really have to be as diligent. We have to be ferocious, really, with our focus and in how we're spending our time and our attention. So yeah, I think there are some practical steps that any of us can take. One is what I mentioned. Putting that setting on your phone that's actually telling you, okay, this is how much time you're spending on your phone. It's an eye opener. Two, definitely turning off all notifications. Maybe if you need the texts on, if you need to be, reached right away, but taking off all social media notifications. All these bells and dings that are going off. Which again, that's Pavlov's dogs. We don't want to be conditioned to always answer the bell. I think even removing it from touching your body, having it in your pocket, or the watch, and as devices get more sophisticated, the watch, I've seen this happen with many people. When the watch is touching their skin, it seems to fuel a new level of addiction because now it's becoming a part of them, and they can feel that every vibration, every ding, and they don't even know that they're looking at it. They're not even consciously aware that their gaze and their eyes are going to their watch or their phone. So removing it from touching your skin, and then maybe even, fourth step, putting it in a different room.
Yeah.
I've tried to get more in the habit of, especially when I come home, when I'm with my kids, can I just leave my phone somewhere? So I'm not tempted when I'm playing with my kids and I'm getting a little bored myself to pull out my phone to distract myself. So those are some real simple ways that we can all, take right now to start taking control over our devices controlling us.
Yeah, that's really well said. And it just sounds to my ear like, the suggestions you're offering are all about just being awake to the degree to which we're dependent on and engaged with our devices, and then being intentional about opening up some spaces when we aren't. So more generally in your book, you talk about how our lives are profoundly influenced by what we pay attention to. So we've just been talking about how much attention we pay to devices. How are you seeing this dynamic of, how we're influenced by what we pay attention to in a more general sense.
Yeah, sure. I talk about the psychological theory called inattentional blindness, which is a theory that basically is studied over time that we actually don't see most of what comes across our in front of us because other attention demanding tasks are at place. So I talk about the videos, and we maybe have all seen them, but at a speaking engagement, I might show the video of two teams passing the ball, a black team and a white team, and the narrator says, "Well, how many passes does a team in white make?" And I joke, I want to see how smart the room is, see if you guys can get this right. Everybody really focus and pay attention. So everybody's passing or counting the passes the team is in white is making. And then the video stops and I say, "What's the answer?" And everybody shouts 13. And I'm like, "Oh, great, you got it right. They got the number of passes right." But then the narrator says, "But did you see the moonwalking bear?" And that's when they replay the video, and this full-sized male in a bear costume moonwalks across the whole screen, but nobody in this room sees it because they're focused on counting the passes that the team in white makes.
Yeah.
And that taps into this idea, and every good marketer knows this, every good advertiser knows this, and I was in marketing myself. That's why you're trying to get images in front of people. They called it the rule of 7 in marketing, that you want to get your product, your image in front of somebody at least 7 times before they'll even consciously become aware that they're seeing it. So that's why they want those repeated messages, those repeated advertisements coming at you, because really we only see what we're looking for. And that might sound, too common sense, or what does that even mean? But really, we only see really what we've intentionally made our minds up that we're looking for. So even in the Bible, when Paul's talking about to the Philippines, and I talk about this in the book, to think about what is noble, to think about what is good, to think about what is right. I don't think he's saying that just so we can naively trick ourselves into thinking that we're blessed. I think he's saying that to say, you will only see those things if you're paying attention to them.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, if you're thinking, man, my life's terrible, God, he's distant, he hates me. Look at all the stuff I have to complain about. That's what you're going to see, because we only can see what we've made our minds up that we're actually looking for. So it's a new way, a different way to think about paying attention, that it's not a passive thing. It's actually a very active and engaged thing that is habit forming, that we need to grow that skill and that habit of.
Now, that's key. Yeah, I think your point that we can train in a sense. And if you think about it, most of the spiritual disciplines to some degree are about training our capacity to pay attention to what or really who matters in the midst of our lives. So, we talked a minute ago about distraction. And I wonder if you could just think out loud with us about what are some of the prices or costs of our habits of distraction these days? What's it costing us?
Yeah, it's costing us, time, obviously, and that's what we've been talking about, the amount of time. Yeah. But on the flip side, it's also all the things that we're missing. So it's not just the amount of time that we're spending, or, just on a social media platform where we really have no control what images are coming across our way, and they've created these systems again to be so that we don't have to think about it. Yeah. They've created systems like what they call infinite scroll,
right?
Which a programmer, and I quote this programmer in my book, he has since come out and said, it's like behavioral cocaine. These things that we've created, that there's thousands of extremely smart engineers creating, so that you don't have to think about all the ways that you're not thinking, right? Yep. And all the images that are coming across, and these systems, these algorithms and this AI systems, they're not asking questions of morality, or they're not asking questions of your emotional or mental, spiritual well-being. Again, they just want to hook you and addict you, just like any good drug wants to do, right? And by good, I mean terrible drug that wants to hook and addict you.
Yeah.
So that's what we're losing on that sense. But then also on the flip side, what we're missing out of. And if you're coming from a faith-filled perspective, you might be crying out to God all the time. God, where should I go in my life? What job should I take? Who should I marry? Where should I live? And I believe each day we're given these answers, and that's why the book is called Listen to Your Day. Because I feel like God is speaking to us constantly throughout the day, but we're missing it. because we've but not given ears to hear or eyes to see. We're not really focused in on, okay, God, how are you revealing these answers to me? How are you revealing truth? And then how you're revealing peace and joy and contentment to me throughout the day. But I'm missing it because I'm not paying attention to that because I'm so overly distracted and hurried and busy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, the whole matter of cultivating our capacity for attention is really, really critical. I'm wondering what have been some of the spiritual practices maybe for you that have sort of helped deepen or lengthen, that attention span you talked about.
Yeah.
What's been helping you?
One of the things that really helps me, and I think this can be particular for each person, but for me, it is getting out into nature. It is.
Ah,
It could be a walk by a lake by my house. I'll write for a few hours, and then I'll take a little hike. It's a little loop. It's out in nature. And I know we're all busy, and it's hard to do these kind of things. But for me, it is so important to take those 30 to 45 minutes
yeah,
for physical health, but also for that mental, spiritual health. Those are the times that I'm really praying and communing with God. And there's numerous studies from a psychological perspective that shows how beneficial it is for us to just be walking in nature.
yeah,
There's more synapses firing in your brain when you're just taking a walk by a lake than any app could ever hope to produce.
yeah,
And it's positive feelings, and it helps fight against anxiety and depression. There's studies that have proven this. And so for me, it is building that habit, that practice of, no matter how much I feel like I need to do, no matter how much is on my plate, I know that it is extremely important for me to take that time to take that walk. And really, that in a sense is going to help me be more productive than ever. And I'll get more of my ideas, and I'm doing a lot of actually my writing on those walks because my mind is free, it's open, I'm listening, I'm hearing. I'm making the intentional choice as well not to put a podcast on or earbuds during that is special time. I protect that time
yeah.
because I know that's when the best writing is going to happen. That's when my soul is going to be fed. So if you jump on my Instagram, almost all my videos are me huffing and puffing because I then at some point I get so excited and so fired up and I want to just share this idea that I'm thinking through. So I'm creating this video. So I am distracting myself in a sense, but it's just because I'm getting clarity during those moments. So that in a sense is a spiritual practice for me of, I got to take those walks. I got to get out in nature.
Yeah, that is good. And I agree. If we are spending a lot of our time literally looking at screens, whether the computer screens or television screens or phone screens, it starts to shape our imagination for who we are.
Mm-hmm.
But if we make space to get out into the world God's made, trees and birds and flowers and whatever it is, there's something about that helps us remember who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see too how that space would sort of deepen or strengthen your capacity for attention in the rest of your day.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's, we all talk about those aha moments, and we all know that there's moments that happen. And yet I feel like in our age, we've really limited the spaces where those aha moments can happen because we are so overly, distracted. It's kind of like, it's like that sponge, that kind of nasty sponge that you should have thrown out a while ago. That's at your kitchen sink. That's just getting saturated with water all the time. And so it never really dries out. And then the smell that happens because of it, and it loses its functionality because it's never been given the time or space to dry out. And I think that's the same with our minds and our brains. We're never giving ourselves the time and space to just be in silence, be still, pray, get out, so that our mind can function as it was designed to do. And then those aha moments will happen while we're gardening, while we're doing the dishes, while we're taking a shower or taking a bath. I even formed the practice while I was writing the book of, I'm going to take baths. This might be a little awkward to talk about, but I'm going to take baths because that's a time where I can't have a phone. I might kill myself if I bring my laptop in there. But I'm just still and I'm silent. And I actually, I would jot notes down during those times because I was getting so much clarity, those aha moments. So we have to protect those spaces in our life, not only for our mental health, but gosh, that's when we're going to get our best ideas for the problems that our mind has been working on. It needs that space to come in to say, hey, here's the aha moment that's going to solve that problem for you.
Yeah. Well, what I hear you saying, I mean, it's kind of what we talk about too. We need unhurried spaces,
Mm-hmm.
creative ideas, wise solutions to problems. You almost never achieve those. You almost
Mm-hmm.
never sort of brainstorm those. You almost always receive them in a place of space, of listening, of paying attention. So, to me, that's just another reason why the practices you're describing are so important. Now, one of the things in one chapter I liked, you talked about the importance of moments that feel awkward or feel boring or feel too quiet. And I think those are the moments when a lot of us just pick up the phone because
Mm-hmm.
I'm uncomfortable. But
Mm-hmm.
you're suggesting maybe moments like that could actually be a gift instead of, a liability or curse.
Yeah, exactly. And I call it the death of awkward. We've really removed awkward and feeling uncomfortable from our social environment. And I'm with you. I don't like being uncomfortable. I don't like those awkward times. I like to ease the awkwardness just like anybody else. But again, I've started to realize the importance of that, and what I call not so chance encounters in our life.
Yeah.
We say, oh, we have these chance encounters. Well, I'd argue they're not so chance encounters, because the odds of you standing, let's say, next to that person in the grocery line in this moment in history, the chances of you sitting next to this person in the plane, the chances of you being in an elevator with somebody, the odds are so small that we would be there together in this moment of time. And so I call it a not so chance encounter. So again, what are we missing
Mm.
by feeling awkward, feeling uncomfortable? So I got to check. I got to pull up my phone. I'm not even looking at anything. I'm just giving the social cue to this person. Hey, I don't want to talk to you. Don't even bother. But you never know. You never know what God had in store for you by bringing that person next to you. And I've had those moments in planes where I've chosen to say, you know what, I am just going to say hi to this person, and it's been amazing experiences, life-changing experiences that have
Yeah.
happened just from being open to being present again in the moment. And we talk about being present a lot nowadays,
Yeah.
but to do that, again, you have to be willing to just sit in some awkward, uncomfortable spaces, or some bored spaces without instantly filling it with entertainment or distraction. And as a parent of young kids, I
Mm.
think we're fighting that fight now, where we're really
Oh
seeing
boy.
the importance of boredom for kids, and how many studies again have shown that, how kids need to be bored instead of just constantly having that reflex motion of jumping on an iPad or a phone. I think it carries over to adults too. We need to be bored. We need to be awkward. We need to feel uncomfortable, because there's amazing things that happens in those moments.
So as I'm hearing you, so our impulse often, I think, is to solve the boredom with some quick stimulation, open up social media or start watching YouTube shorts or something,
Mm-hmm.
where it sounds like you're saying we could let that cue of boredom, the feeling of boredom or the feeling of awkwardness be a trigger for a different response. So what might that look like just in practical terms? Let's say I'm in the middle of my day and I'm in between appointments and I'm feeling a little itchy inside or something.
Yeah.
What could I do instead of picking up my phone?
Yeah, well, that's the first step is to realize that you probably are picking up the phone. And
Yeah.
again, it takes that habit forming, that intentionality to say, "Oh wow, I'm literally been on the phone for a minute." It's kind of like driving, right? Where you've taken the same drive so many times,
Yeah.
you're not even realizing. All of a sudden, you're like, "I'm here," and I actually don't even consciously remember the last 3 turns I made. Yeah, I think the same as for our phones. We really have to consciously again start forming the habit and practice of stopping ourselves.
Yeah.
And then it might be as simple as asking God, saying, God, just a quick prayer, a prayer of thanks, or a prayer of thanks, of asking God, what should I do right now? Even asking God to intervene in
Hmm.
some of these moments. Because again, if we call ourselves believers and we say that God speaks to us, well, are we allowing any space to listen?
Yeah.
And so it might be that moment of, hey, God, do you want to say something to me right now? And, I think whatever it is, it's going to be more beneficial than whatever new headline you were going to look at to tell you about how terrible everything's going. I'm
Yeah.
sure it's going to bring you a lot more peace, joy, happiness in that moment. So it might be throwing up that quick prayer,
Yeah.
or it might be just sitting in stillness and silence and just taking some deep breaths. Psychologists will talk about grounding exercises. Could even do
Hmm.
something like that where you feel the table, you take some deep breaths, you listen and just hear the noises, hear the birds, whatever it might be, so that again you can physically be present in the moment and allow yourself to hear and see maybe some revelation that is going on that you weren't listening to, you weren't being aware of before that moment.
Yeah. No, that's really good. And that last comment, the idea, a lot of times I think we think of attention or distraction as mostly being stuff that happens in our brains, ideas and thoughts, but there's an embodied reality to this whole thing that you just hinted at. And so I wonder, can you talk more about the importance of this reality that we have these God-given bodies and that our bodies can become habituated to distraction and inattention instead of attention?
Yeah, and I think it's obviously a mental thing, and it's obviously how we're rewiring our brains one way or the other to be intentional about the way we're spending our attention or not.
Mhm.
Um, but then, yeah, there's also these physical components that we can physically do things to start forming the habit again of, okay, I'm going to take control of my attention right now. So, I don't want to throw my wife under the bus here a little bit, but I know in those moments where I can just tell when she's on the couch, she's on her phone, I can tell she's anxious, I can tell
Mhm.
she's frustrated with something, and so I'll tell her like, you, here, get up and go on a walk. Get up and just take a
Mhm.
step outside. Get up and hey, do the dishes. That I would love for you to do that instead of me doing it. So maybe this is my excuse to try to have you do the dishes instead of me. But just again, that physical act of putting my phone down, getting up from the space I'm in, and let me just go do something different with my body can again give us that space and that freedom. And we're making an intentional choice at that moment with our physical body as well as then our mental choices to start choosing how we're going to pay our attention instead of just being mindlessly taken over and sitting there and then we kind of get stuck on that carousel ride, eating the cotton candy, going up and down and around, feeling nauseous, but then staying on the ride and eating more cotton candy and going around on that ride.
Yeah, we just sort of get trapped in a mode, don't we? And we don't know there's another option. You said kind of at the top of our time. I don't think any of us have finished a 2-hour stretch of watching, social media or YouTube and thought, man, my life's better. I'm ready for the day.
Uh-huh.
And so part of it is just, I think, experimenting with what you're suggesting to see, is it actually better? If I lean
Exactly.
into, boredom, if I lean into a little feeling of awkwardness, would I maybe find on the other side of that something better than the quick fix of now, oh, good, I've got something to occupy myself with.
And exactly. And especially if you have if you have a dream you want to pursue, if you have a business idea, if you have a book, if you just want to be a better parent, a better spouse, even bringing that why, that goal into our day too, I really want to write a really good book. And, I want to work on these things, even as I start my day communing with God, having some quiet time, but also even centering myself in, I really want to write a really good book. I want to write a good chapter today.
Hmm.
Even bringing the why into your day, a goal or a reason or what you really want to accomplish, that helps too, because then that helps direct you. So instead of just, well, I don't want to waste my time just not to waste my time, it's, well, I don't want to waste my time because I really want to do this.
Hmm.
And I know if I'm intentional about my time and I protect that time, well, then I will hopefully accomplish that better. And I also know as a writer that I do most of my best writing when I'm not writing. It's again when I've protected those spaces throughout my day, driving, doing the dishes, all those things we've talked about. Those aha moments are happening, and that's really when I'm doing my best writing. And then I can jot it down real quick, and I consider it like getting my kindling together. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
getting a lot of kindling, gathering it up, so that something will spark at some point while I'm then actually sitting down and writing my book. So even bringing that goal, that why, that reason why you really don't want to waste your time, I think helps us just reframe our focus and be more intentional about that space.
Yeah, that's really good. Well, one of the intersections I think I hear between what you're writing about and kind of the theme, of the Unhurried Living podcast is we aren't very good at cultivating some of those receptive spaces. We tend to cram, even when we're doing good things, we tend to just cram the space with lots of good work. Mm-hmm. And we don't offer those moments to listen, moments to receive from God, the sorts of things we want to then give in our work or in our connections with people. And so I think your idea of listening to your day and learning how to pay attention is really critical. At the close of your book, you end with what you call mindset models. I thought that was really interesting. Can you say more about these and kind of how they intersect with this idea of paying attention?
Yeah, I wanted to give some more practical steps or just different exercises, so to speak, of how do we practice this?
Yeah.
How do we change our lenses? Because again, we all have lenses that we're looking through. We're all predisposed to pay attention in a certain way.
Yes.
And so I wanted to create some practices, some habits to say, how do we have different mindset models? Let's practice this to look at our day in a different way. And so I lay out these different mindset models to begin to do this. And so, one, for example, that I think begins this section is the entrepreneurial mindset model. Mm-hmm. And I never viewed myself as an entrepreneur. I always thought those were some special, talented people that only slept like an hour and a half and just were extreme extroverts. We all have these visions of who these kind of people are. And I started realizing, I am kind of an entrepreneur as an author and speaker. I have my own business. I guess I'm kind of an entrepreneur. Well, how do entrepreneurs think? Because I think entrepreneurs do view their day differently. And one of the ways that I really see as I've studied entrepreneurs and I've tried to become a better entrepreneur is they pay attention to their problems. And they pay attention to their problems in a positive way, where they see a problem and they might get excited. In the book, I share some of these stories where I talk about the inventor of the Ring doorbell that we all know and love now. Somebody's got some sort of doorbell with the video camera on it so you can see what's going on. Well, this was an inventor that was working in his garage, and he was creating another business. And I feel like every entrepreneur story always starts with the garage. I mean, that's just, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you got to get to the garage.
You better have a garage in your house.
Yeah, you got to, or you're in trouble. But he was struggling with the idea that he would get these packages delivered, but he'd never know when the delivery guy was there because he couldn't hear the doorbell. And so he's like, well, I got to create something, there must be something out there to solve this problem. And so he starts researching that, there must be a video doorbell that's just so common sense. And then he started to realize it doesn't exist. So he begins creating the Ring doorbell, and now, he's, a multi-billionaire, sold his business, all these different things. Yeah. But he saw a problem because he was paying attention to his day. He was paying attention to what was going around him. He saw a problem. And instead of complaining about that problem or becoming embittered about that problem, he started working, well, maybe there's got to be a solution. Yeah. And so that was even just a way, okay, how do myself in the next couple of days, how do I just pay attention to my problems? And let me just write them down, all the problems, all the things I'm frustrated with throughout the day. Let me pay attention to those because maybe there's something that I need to do about them. Either I need to help somebody, or maybe it's a business idea or a book idea or whatever it might be. So it's these mindset models to really reframe the way that we're focusing our attention. And it's really surprising when people go through these. I've taken people through courses of these, how it changes their day, how it changes their perspective, yes. and they're grown to a different awareness and focus that literally changes their life. And it's something we can do every day. And it's simple, but yet it's not something we would naturally do.
Yeah. Well, so you listed entrepreneur, you listed farmer, writer, consultant, investigator, monk. And as I think of each of those, they're different facets of what a perhaps more joyful, alive sort of perspective on your work, on your life might be. Mm-hmm. I was even just thinking it'd be funny to think, what would be some negative models? I was picturing Eeyore, and like everything's bad. There are probably some really negative, Well,
model. Yeah. Oh. I think a lot of us will even get stuck, I call them like drama llamas, people that love drama. And we probably all have family members, I won't rat any of them out right now. We probably always have that family member that loves to call and talk to you about all the drama that's going on, right?
Yeah.
Because that's their lens.
That's what they're paying attention to.
We see what we're looking for.
Yeah.
And again, you can find a lot of drama to focus on, a lot of headlines that you need to call everybody about if that's really what your focus is. So you're totally right. I mean, a lot of us practice the negative mindset models that don't lead to life. They lead to death. And again, that's why I think Paul was talking about. Think about things that are good, that are noble, that are pure, that are righteous. Not to trick yourself into that, not to manifest these things into your life, but really just to open your awareness to say, this is all around me, all these good things, all these blessings. God is actively engaged in my life. I just haven't been seeing it. I've been missing it. So God, open my eyes, and I think even in the beginning chapter, I say, say a little prayer as you're reading this book, like, God, open my eyes, open my ears so that I can see, so that I can really hear how you're actively engaged in the details of my day.
That's really good. I appreciate that. Well, I wonder if you could let our listeners know how they can find out more about your books and your work.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Thanks again, Alan, for having me on. This has been an amazing blessing to speak with you. It's really the perfect fit, the unhurried life. I mean,
I love the intersection. Yeah.
That is a great fit. People can find me at my website, allgrownup.com.
Okay.
And it's GROAN, like you're groaning in pain. It's Punderful. Allgrownup.com. You can find chapters from different books I've written on that website for free, or you can download chapters from Listen to Your Day for free on the website if you want to get more of a taste of it. Or find me on social media at Paul Angone, Angone. It's a good Italian name, so it's hard to spell and pronounce. But find me, and please reach out if you have any questions or if you want to connect. Please reach out. I would love to talk to you more.
Well, I appreciate that. It's been great. Today, again, my guest has been Paul Angone, and we've been talking about his book, Listen to Your Day. Paul, it really has been a pleasure to have this conversation.
Well, thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation as much as I did. In the next few episodes, we'll be talking with authors Glenn and Holly Packiam, Casey Tigret, and David Zahler. I can't wait to share those episodes with you. Now, if you'd like to receive more help from Unhurried Living, I invite you to join our Unhurried Daily email list. For 40 days, we'll send you a brief daily email that offers personal reflections from life and Scripture to help you take the next step in following Jesus' unhurried way. You can sign up on our website at unhurriedliving.com. We are honored to encourage thousands of leaders just like you. Thanks for listening. You've been listening to the Unhurried Living podcast. Join us next time to learn more about following the genius of Jesus' unhurried way of life and leadership.